Do you know what's interesting about Orphan First Kill? Our lead character isn't an orphan like she was in the first film, and nor is this her first kill. 2009's Orphan is the latest horror film to make the jump from being a great standalone to finally, after nearly 15 years, ending up as a franchise thanks to Orphan First Kill. Now, Orphan First Kill is a prequel to the original, taking place just a few years prior to the Orphan story that we all know and love. It sees the character of Esther from the first film, real name Leena Klammer, escaping from a Soviet mental institution, whereupon she assumes the identity of a missing American girl called Esther, where she manages to convince the members of the family that she is indeed their long-lost child. But of course, things don't go smoothly. I think that's about all the plot that you need to know for now, because I don't want to get too heavily into spoilers. So I might as well just come right out and say this here. There's no point in beating about the bush here and playing it coy. I really enjoyed Orphan First Kill. It's a fun, nicely put together little franchise horror film, and I'll tell you why I really liked it. Now initially, whenever you hear that a prequel's being made to anything, you can't help but think, do you really need to tell that story? Especially considering when, dramatically, we already know exactly where it ends. In actual fact, if you watch the first Orphan, it tells you exactly what's going to happen in First Kill, which means that really, all that you're doing is padding out a flashback. In actual fact, what First Kill isn't, well, first off, it isn't the first kill because Leena Klammer's already killed before when we first meet her this time around, but what it isn't is that it's not an origin story. It doesn't go into Leena Klammer's past or how she ended up the way that she is. It doesn't strip away her mystique and blame everything on her bad childhood, which apparently earlier drafts of the original Orphan script did. First Kill is basically just another Orphan story about young Leena wreaking havoc on another family group set chronologically before the first film just because there's a narrative opportunity to fit another story in there. And so what Orphan First Kill actually is that it's a prequel done right. Because it starts off with the assumption that we know exactly who Leena Klammer is and what she's capable of. It builds her up into this big mythical villain, which is what all the best franchises do, using our familiarity with the returning characters to make them seem extra special. We know that Leena is incredibly dangerous and highly intelligent, so when we're introduced to her in this amazingly dramatic opening set piece in this really gothic Soviet mental institution, right away you can feel the tension, you can feel that threat. And once again, building on the fact that we know how this is going to end, we're just waiting to see Leena eventually cut loose. And the longer they hold off letting her do that, the more that sense of tension builds. In fact, one of my favourite moments in this entire film involves Leena and a pencil, where you're expecting some kind of Heath Ledger Joker type thing, but in actual fact, that's quite the opposite of what we get. Because Leena is a lot smarter than that, and her real power is in her ability to manipulate other people. See, one of the best things is that we know exactly who Leena is, or rather, we know what she is. Orphan's big twist was, of course, that its main character, 12-year-old Esther, was in actual fact not a child, but an adult woman in her 30s, Leena Klammer, who had this aging disease that kept her looking physically like a child. Now, in the original, that was a smart twist, one that made sense and was pretty shocking. However, it also gave way to a very creepy end scene, and I don't mean creepy in a good way, where we basically had a 12-year-old actress who got dressed up like a hooker and tried to seduce a grown man. Now, whatever narrative contortions you have to make to justify that moment, his execution has always made my skin crawl quite a bit. And on a completely unrelated note, let's not forget Orphan was produced by none other than Leonardo DiCaprio. However, that whole unsavoury element is done away with in the sequel, because we know exactly what kind of a beast Leena Klammer is, and rather than just being a creepy child, we get a chance to go much deeper under her skin, where you realise just how existentially horrific her life really is. she's a grown woman trapped permanently in a child's body. And that leads to these moments of Kylo Ren-like self-loathing where she lashes out and smashes things because she's angry at her own helplessness. But it also leads, surprisingly, to the emergence of Leena Klammer as, bizarrely, a sympathetic horror protagonist. I'm not saying that Leena Klammer is anything other than an outright psychopathic villain, but what she is she's a strangely tragic character, and now that actress Isabelle Fuhrman has actually grown up and is in her early 20s, we get more of a sense of her character as someone struggling to pass herself off as a child. And because this time around we know exactly what Leena Klammer is, that she is an adult, there's a lot more room to explore the psychological toll that performance has on her. And that's really what Orphan First Kill is all about. Unlike the first Orphan, the prequel puts us very much in Esther's shoes. We see things through her perspective because we understand that her character is all about putting on a performance and suppressing certain parts of herself. We're also told that Leena's real desire is to be free, that she struggled against her restraints enough to scar her for life when she was first taken to the Sarn Institute. So really, Esther wants to be free to be herself, and over the course of First Kill, we see Leena go from predator to prisoner as we build more and more sympathy for her as a character. We know she operates as a highly intelligent, ruthless predator, which she's had to become in order to survive, but there's also the hint that she's driven by sadness and by a fundamental emptiness inside her. And there's a key point in the middle of Orphan First Kill where our sympathies pivot and where Leena makes a specific choice that is the film's biggest and most audacious moment, because it's asking us to believe in her as a tragic anti-heroine rather than just as a cool villain. Now, tied into that turning point, there is also a big twist in First Kill that's been met with a kind of mixed reactions, but in a way, it's a twist that's a lot more important dramatically than the simple shock reveal of the first Orphan, because it's a twist that's much more vital to the whole DNA of the prequel. The more you rewatch the second film, the more you'll appreciate how much is actually going on at all times, how tight the plotting is, and how much the whole film has taken the key idea of the first Orphan, Esther not being what she seems and having something much more sinister beneath the surface, and made the second film all about performance, and different layers of performing, and things not being at first what they seem. All the elements slot together neatly to build this very well thought out dramatic puzzle box that entraps its various characters into playing out this tense, high stakes chess game rather than just simply rehashing those evil child cuckoo in the nest tropes from the first film. I will say though, when I said First Kill is a prequel done right, there is one particular element in it that bothers me. There's this thing in the first Orphan film where in a certain light we can see Esther's childlike paintings reveal these secret devilish blacklight images underneath, which to me always seemed like the most heavy-handed and unnecessary way of symbolising Esther's hidden secrets. This incredibly literal and rather daft thing that was never explained, never made sense, and didn't really need to be there. The problem is, of all the elements in the original Orphan, First Kill decides to give us an origin story for those paintings, which we really didn't need. Although, oddly, it is actually quite nicely done this time around, and it doesn't seem like it's just this really crude bit of manufactured connective tissue from one film to the other. The biggest problem I've got though, and it's really the elephant in the room, is the fact that the whole film seems to have been shot with a pair of thick woolly grey tights over the camera lens. I get that at some point the impulse may have been to soften the image slightly to disguise some imperfections on the special effects, to sort of hide the joins where the child double is used for Isabelle Fuhrman in long shot or where the odd bit of CGI is used. But Orphan First Kill is sadly an absolute fucking eyesore to look at, and that's a shame because it really shouldn't be. You can't even blame a particularly incompetent DP, because it's shot by the same guy who did the cinematography for Brandon Cronenberg's brilliant Possessor, which looked beautiful. At some point along the way, too many filters were applied, and the end result is frustrating to say the least, because it really muddies what should be a big, colourful popcorn horror thriller. After all, the original Orphan looked really crisp and bright, so it's a shame that there's such a drop in quality. You really can't watch Orphan First Kill in its current format and not think, why the fuck is this so hazy? But overall, I think First Kill does exactly what I'd hoped it would do by not only treating the character of Esther or Leena respectfully, but by showing us a whole new side to her character, exploiting the changes in the actress herself to create new storytelling opportunities, and giving us a story that works dramatically even though we know how it all ends. Leena is always the smartest person in the room, and even when she meets her match, we're treated to the same kind of clever cat-and-mouse psychological chess games between her and her opponents that made the first film so compelling. Now as for a rating, well, I think there's 3 ways that you can look at First Kill overall. First off, as a film in its own right, simply how good is it? Secondly, how good a follow-up is it to the first film? And thirdly, maybe least importantly, is how does it fare in the context of the rest of this year's crop of horror films? Well, I'll take the last one first, maybe because it is the least important. Now, I've had a great deal of trouble finding any decent horror films this year. I think less than 10% of the horror films that I've seen from 2022 so far I would consider to be worth a rating of 4 stars or above. Now I only mention that because maybe that might have coloured my opinions of this a little bit. Maybe in a better year this wouldn't stand out so much. But in the context of the year in horror as a whole, Orphan First Kill is a strong top 5 of 2022 contender for me so far, and definitely my favourite franchise horror film of the year so far. As a sequel to the first film, I think it also fits in nicely. Obviously, we didn't need it, and with any prequel, there's always that disconnect between hearing someone referencing events in the past and allowing your mind to fill in the blanks, and actually seeing those events play out. Prequels will always shoehorn in more drama into fleshing out backstory than you realistically ever need, but at least First Kill does so with style. To be honest, it's much better than I thought it was going to be, because it doesn't feel the need to unravel and deconstruct Leena's mystique, but instead it actually adds to it and develops her as this iconic character, whilst not feeling the need to explain every single banal little detail about her backstory, like I think so many prequels do. So as a film spun off from the original Orphan, I think First Kill honours the legacy of that first film completely, whilst also doing its own thing and doing it well. And finally, as a film in its own right, well, of course, it's not perfect. The hazy visuals are a massive problem that I kind of hope might get cleaned up at some stage for a Blu-ray release, because there's really no excuse to have a film that looks this shit, especially one that should be colourful and fun. It does have some daft, tropey thriller stuff in it, of course, and it does have its share of rather too cutesy moments. But it's also that rare modern horror franchise film that just has fun, develops its IP into new and enjoyable directions, whilst also rattling along as a tight, linear, dramatic story that's fundamentally unafraid of embracing the genre for what it is. That's why, for me, Orphan First Kill is coming in at a rating of 7.5 out of 10. It's a dynamic, larger-than-life franchise horror film that cares about treating its own history with respect, buoyed by this stunning performance from Isabelle Fuhrman that's made possible, but never overshadowed, by an array of clever filming techniques that help to sell the illusion that she's still the child that she was in the first Orphan film. That you rarely question the sheer oddness of what's actually going on behind the scenes to create that character is of course a testament to Isabelle Fuhrman as an actress, and she is absolutely the heart of this entire film. I would happily see her do more of these films, because I really think there just aren't enough brilliant horror villains out there these days, especially not those that rely on a really great actor's performance rather than just a mask or a costume. To me, Isabelle Fuhrman's Esther is up there in the ranks of original 21st century horror villains with the great Tobin Bell as Jigsaw, and it's a performance that just crackles with life and energy whenever she's on screen. That the film is even half as good as Isabelle Fuhrman's performance makes it worth watching. That it gives her even more time to shine and to play up her character's layers of performance makes it hugely entertaining. So sign me up for more of these, please. Just take the fucking filters off the camera next time.